Hey everyone, this is Chris Busby, editor of the Bollard. Welcome to our inaugural broadcast of the Bollard Broadcast here on Portland Media Center, the television station. We're also going to have this up on our Substack, bollardhead.substack.com. I'm here today with Ephram Bennett, otherwise known as E. We're over at the Leading the Way facility up in Bangor, Maine. I want to start out as well saying thank you to them for helping facilitate here today over at Leading the Way. E, do you have any comments about your time here and what it's been like here at the Leading the Way? It's adult probation facility with the Department of Corrections.
Yes. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Department of Corrections, Randall Liberty, and Deputy Commissioner Contello, and the staff here at Leading the Way, Tammy Lewis, Jeffrey Vance, and the probation officer, all the probation officers that work here. They have been a tremendous support, tremendous help in my transition. In about a week or so, I'll be moving out of here, back into my own place. I'm excited.
Great.
But I just wanted to thank them for this program. And a lot of people who may need help as they transition out of prison, this might be one of the best alternatives for prison, male or female. And it's what you make of it. You have to roll your sleeves up and do the work. And they're here to support you. And they've been, like I said, just a tremendous support mechanism for me to fall back on or go to when I needed support and help.
That's great to hear. I'm really glad to hear that. Big things have been happening for you right and left. I think top of the agenda for us is the publication of your new book, your memoir. God's Love Kept Me Fighting is the name of it. Now, I first came in contact with you and heard about you through one of our columnists at the Bollard, Leo Hilton. And as Leo has explained in his columns for us, during his time at Maine State Prison, you were a huge inspiration for him. You have acted as, let's use the term life coach, because I know that's a term that you prefer as opposed to mentor. But can you explain to me, I know you've had this great positive impact on many people's lives, but what does it mean to you to do this life coaching, and what does that relationship mean to you as it pertains to what you've done for other folks who've been incarcerated in Maine State Prison, also in jails? Like, what does that look like for you to be a life coach?
Sure. Let me answer that by saying that I had parents that were very instrumental in teaching their 7 children to give back.
Yeah.
When you can. And so I got my start in actually life coaching and the reason why I don't like the term mentor, because everybody just throw that word around like it's just a baseball or softball.
Yeah.
So, it's, to mentor somebody, that means you're going to be there short term as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Some would disagree with that, but that's just my personal feelings. And then second of all, I like the term life coach because to be a life coach to someone, that means you spending your entire natural life with that person, taking on their problems, taking on whatever come in that person's life. You're there with them to help them through those life difficult moments. But I give first of all, I give all the honor and praise to God for, giving me parents to truly instill in their children, as I stated, to give back, and pay it forward. And so, that's what actually got me started. But, what does it mean to have helped literally thousands of incarcerated men and women?
Thousands.
Yes. And in
Maine and also
Maine, all around,
right.
In Chicago,
Sure.
Seattle, Las Vegas,
That's
you name
yeah.
it, just all around. And so what it means, when as pertaining to Leo, is so we like to, in our so-called justice, which I call, I don't like how people use the term now criminal legal system. What's legal about a system that's broken and illegal?
Mhm.
So I don't see where we get off calling it, the criminal legal system when
Right.
the system is broken and need overhauling. And who can
Mhm.
speak best to that? I don't think people who just come out of college with degrees without the experience of going to being incarcerated
Mhm.
uh, and actually, having the experience with working with other people's children who are incarcerated. So I'm a father.
Yes.
And so what kicked in with me is I didn't see Leo as this monster
Mhm.
as they portray even me.
And Leo was 18. We should
And
tell
Leo
our
was
viewers at the
yes,
time he was literally a kid, a teenager.
absolutely. And
Right.
that's what I saw.
Right.
I saw a tall, scared kid.
Mhm.
And when I saw him and Daniel Fortune, and
Mhm.
me being a father, that's what kicked in. How would I want somebody to treat my children? Yes, mind you, I'm not, just, not looking at the crime that they committed, which was horrible.
Right.
Any crime that anyone commit, to an innocent citizen of Maine or anywhere around the world, yes, there has to be repercussions.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the human side of it, this was a kid,
Mhm.
and for me to see his name plastered all on the news, and I'm watching his trial from Cumberland County Jail, waiting on my own trial.
Mhm.
But, it was something about what I saw in that kid's eyes
Mm.
that it really made me take a look at how our system,
Mm.
paint pictures of people as monsters.
Yeah.
And that's not what I saw. Now, at first, I did not want to work with him. And I talk about this in my book.
Mhm.
Because I have my own problems.
Right.
You know what I mean? Broken relationships, witnessing my own children's lives. And then one day God showed it to me crystal clear that you may be out of your own children's lives now, but I'm preparing you by putting you in somebody else's children's lives. You show me that you could help them as I help you help them. And then we can have a conversation about you being back in your children's lives.
Mm.
And it's a true fact, a statement that God is faithful because I'm back in my children's lives.
Yeah.
But
Huh.
Leo is a bright young man with a bright future, but he didn't see a future.
Mhm.
He couldn't see nothing, but that's still.
He's facing, he had a 50-year sentence. We should also tell people,
Yes.
So, and his brother, Danny has, I think 2 life sentences. I mean, they were both facing such long sentences. You could
Yes.
see where that hopelessness came in.
Yes. And which I never even heard of someone, whether it's in Maine or any other place, but this happened to be the first incidents where a person didn't kill someone. They got 2 life sentences. That's Daniel.
Yes,
the other
Daniel
brother.
Fortune. Yep.
Now, I know victims advocates and victims' rights groups and all of them, and I'm not downplaying. I want to make this real clear to everybody listening or hearing this. I'm not minimizing my crime or any crime that anyone commit. That's first and foremost. So for all the naysayers, all the haters, and all the people who gonna try to, talk down on me, look at this crime. Okay, you can go ahead and do that, but I did my sentence.
Right.
That's number one. Okay, I did the time. But to take kids, all right, whose minds are not fully developed. All right. And according to the Pew Research Center, for a person between the ages and 25, that's when the mind starts to truly develop.
Right, not till 25. Absolutely. That's what the latest science is saying that, really. Yes, we should be considering people juveniles or if we're trying to judge responsibility or adult decision making, science has now told us pretty convincingly that not until 25 do we really as adults, so isn't that a fascinating thing?
It's very,
and it's a very important thing, because I think it obviously behooves us to take another look at how we've treated juvenile justice. And Leo is a perfect example.
Yes, this was a kid who should not have, been given that type of a sentence without thorough evaluation from not just the state forensic people. See, because they got me the same way.
Yeah.
See, the state put their people up there.
Yeah.
And they evaluate you based upon the state. If you try to, when you go to prison, first of all, you strip down everything. All right, you're already poor. If you're marginalized, you come from a poor white community or a poor black community or a brown community, you don't have the money to be paying for no attorney, and the system know that.
Yeah.
They already know that.
Yeah.
So when I look at Leo, him and Daniel's situation, it's like many poor white people in Maine that I've helped and life coached. If you can't pay, then guess what? You're going to stay.
Yeah, and they had nothing, we should tell our other viewers too. I mean, at the time, they were basically foster kids. They had just gotten out of high school.
Yes.
But, no money to speak of.
Yes.
They didn't come from privilege. Yeah.
Yes, and, and the thing of it is, their case needs to be reevaluated, looked at and reevaluated, because when they came to talk about LD 178, I'm gonna get right back. I'm gonna get back to Leo in a second.
Sure. The current parole bill, we should tell the viewers, LD 178 in the Maine legislature to reinstate parole in Maine, which it was repealed back in the late 70s. A lot of people don't even know we don't have parole, but there is another bill to reinstate parole.
Yes. So when Leo came to me about that and me understanding parole thoroughly, I told him, well, that doesn't fit right now, the incarcerated residents throughout MDOC. And the reason why is because there has not been enough knowledge, about how to go about getting parole. Now, don't get me wrong, legislators who came to the prison, I don't want to name names and say who, but I could just put it to you this way. So everybody eat off prisoners. So anybody who was incarcerated, I don't care who you are, you can't tell me you haven't been played, pimped, or hustled. Because this system is designed to keep you in the system. And when you want to talk about parole, first of all, I didn't see in my nearly 16 years of incarceration, I didn't see, but maybe I can count on one hand, guys that were truly, truly serious about the harm that they had caused their victims, their communities, their own families. Because you got to remember, Chris, you don't just hurt your victim. There's the community, your family, the victim's family. There's a lot of victims. And so when you talk about giving somebody parole, now this is where people didn't agree with me, but I totally wholeheartedly agree with the fact that I just didn't see the guys, and me and you discussed this before, and I told you, out of 100%, I only seen 8% that I would say that qualify for, that I thought that did the necessary work to qualify for parole. And Leo was at the top of that food chain list.
Yeah. Well, I think that speaks what you're saying. It sounds to me like you're saying the system, it used to be wholly reoriented from one that is designed to, as you said, keep you in, to one that's designed to give you the skills to get out earlier. So that, I mean, as you're saying, it's not so much, it's not as easy as passing the bill.
Exactly.
This has got to also involve an entire attitude change on the part of the DOC and other interested parties as to what the expectations are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, like, right now, I'm working with Illinois legislators on a parole bill because we too don't have parole.
Is that
no more.
right? I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and here's one of the things that I have put forth to them, and how they use this information is totally up to them. So first of all, when you talk about parole, there has to be community engagement, all right, right along with the victim and the victim's right advocate groups. So I'm not dispelling those organizations because they play a huge role in making sure that those who are supposed to stay incarcerated remain there. Because you hearing this from me, there are some people who are incarcerated should stay there the rest of their life. And the reason why I'm saying that, because they are a danger to society. But when you have people that's working towards not only betterment of self, their own lives, but they, for instance, Leo, he proposed something. I mean, do I feel he went about it the wrong way? Yes. But he was proposing. So with me, I waited until I got out and waited until my book was released. All right. But in my book, with Panda Publishing Company, who published my book, so I have a clause. Every book that's sold, $1 go to victims' rights groups.
Great.
Every dollar. I mean, every book sold, $1 goes to them.
Great.
So, and then on top of that, I'm working on my nonprofit organization, the Believe in Hope Foundation. So it is to educate victims on why people become, if you will, in this cycle called violence that leads to incarceration or violence against them. So victims have a right to know why someone did something besides, a prosecutor or a judge just sentencing you to this amount of time and you telling, you have the victim right groups or a prosecutor saying we getting justice. Is it really justice for that family who has lost their loved one at the hands of somebody like me? Or like a Leo or someone like that? No, they ain't getting no justice.
Right.
That's just a pacifier. You can't justify any crime against someone. You can't bring that person back.
Right.
Only thing you doing is slapping a Band-Aid on it, and because that person ain't, you saying that, so our system has this, we leave those who have been harmed by us in the blind. I wrote my book because I want those who are blind to the fact that, just because they gave me a sentence, that don't mean that you're getting true justice.
Yeah, this book, reads in a way like, it helps explain what happened to you, how this came to be. You'd mentioned your parents, I do want to note that they were very involved in the civil rights struggle at the time, correct? So you grew up in the civil rights struggle in the 60s in Chicago.
Yes, and going back to what I was saying, but briefly, so I just feel that, Leo, him and a few others, they would fit what is called getting parole. Because parole, no one deserves parole. Parole is something that you got to look at it as a privilege.
You earn it.
You earn parole. And so you have to engage the victim that want to be engaged with that person who they're considering to give parole to. So, there has to be programs. There has to be, whether the person want to go to college, there has to be, I'm talking about, serious dialogue, going back and forth. Even if the victims don't want to be sitting in a room would a person who did harm to a loved one or them, but just to know that, okay, this is what that person is doing who they're considering for parole, because it'll give them a better power, and a greater understanding that they ain't just, okay, we went to court, they gave this guy a sentence, he got a number, and that's it.
Right.
But who gonna suffer is still the victims.
Right.
So I feel victims, legislators, prisoners, DOC, police departments, everyone should come together, and that's what I'm doing right now with the Illinois legislators is proposing an idea of bringing all of these different organizations together to make a safer community and to make a wrong right. Because without doing that, I don't see Maine really getting parole. Because you have to do all of those things and then more. And then also, yes, getting back to my parents.
Yeah.
So I came up in the era of the 60s, as we talked about. And my parents were in the Black Panther movement. And so I grew up, with true activism, which leads me when I say about a person who get a college degree in, restorative justice or something dealing with activism, but they just got a college degree. Well, that's fine. Don't get me wrong. You got to get started somewhere.
Yeah.
But I lived this.
Right.
This is like you talking to a person who actually did the marches and did all that. And I discuss it and talk about it in my book.
Right.
What proof of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's in the book. So you'll be able to look at it and know that, I'm a person who actually lived these experiences. And me watching my parents go through the things that they had to go through. Of course, being called derogatory names of, bricks, bottles, water hoses turned on.
But one of the things that really struck me about that passage of the book, though, when you were growing up in inner city Chicago, not only it was a very violent neighborhood, it was dangerous, but you also mentioned that the neighbors there had a kind of camaraderie, and it was a kind of neighborhood where you could go down the block to borrow, a cup of sugar, or everyone kind of knew each other's, but they took care of each other as well. Can you elaborate on that a bit? I mean, it was a tough neighborhood, but it had elements of it where people really did support each other still.
Yes. Well, and today in 2025, you knock on your neighbor's door today, you're liable to get shot or the police called.
Exactly.
But back during those times, the people in those poor communities, and I see that, believe it or not, in Maine, like Maine, the people here are generous people, for the most part. But growing up, all we had is each other. And growing up in a poor, impoverished community, all we had was each other. So, when we ran out of things, or when the neighbors ran out of things, we just went to each other's homes to, borrow a stick of butter, a cup of sugar, a little coffee, a loaf of bread. But no one, and the thing back then is you didn't have, of course, social media and wasn't nobody telling nobody business like that.
Yeah.
They just did it because they saw a need. And so, and funny we talking about that because here again, that's what gave me, or that's what makes me the man that I am today, is seeing how my neighbors, looked out for one another and how I grew up and how I was taught. If you see a need, you go to that need and help fulfill that need if you can. And so that's why I love growing up, in Chicago, because it was just close-knit, impoverished but close-knit.
Yeah.
in my neighborhood.
And then, while you were still in high school, was this because of busing? You ended up going to a high school outside of the city, predominantly white, right? It was like much nicer.
Yes.
And that's when you really began your boxing career. But I got the impression from your book that you felt as though you were treated differently, or you were not treated as badly as you might have been because you were such a good athlete.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that experience going to a white high school all of a
Yeah.
sudden and getting into boxing?
So in my neighborhood, I grew up in Harvey, Illinois, right outside of Chicago. And it was 98% African American, black people.
Yeah.
And my high school was about maybe 4 to 6 blocks away. Well, the high school I should have went to, if you notice, I said my high school, but
Right.
so it was called Thornton Township High School, and that was right in Harvey. So I could walk to the high school.
Yeah.
But because of the new laws that had came in that brought in, the busing, they was what you call it, trying to desegregate.
Yes.
And so you took all these black kids and you had this affluent neighborhood, where all these rich, well, not rich, but wealthy white families in this white high school that was 99.9% white. And so you take a black kid. The only time I seen white people was when either on TV or when my auntie used to babysit for this white family. So, I see this little white girl,
Yeah.
but, other than that, I didn't see many white people at all. And so to be bused to an all-white school from being in the black community, I thought that was dumb and ignorant. Which still today, over 50 years or so, I still feel the same way.
Yeah.
But it was rather challenging because so here I was about to go to the Olympic trials. So I boxed my way.
Yeah.
So I became this child prodigy.
Yeah.
So I was on my high school football team. I did real well. Star running back of my football team, and I wrestled as well. So I was a 3-sport star. But my thing was boxing because I just like the one-on-one competition. And I actually started boxing at 12 when I first saw Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier on TV.
Wow.
And I thought to myself that if they doing that, I could do the same thing. And which I don't want to give my book away, but I highlight, that's how I got my start. And then as years went on, I got a chance to be around Ali quite often.
Wow.
And, I was in line to fight Sugar Ray Leonard,
Wow.
So I've been around all the movie stars and, all of the doggone celebrities, and I was a budding celebrity myself. But it was a challenge going to that high school because here I was this superstar who had fought on ABC, NBC, CBS.
Wow.
At that point, I had traveled to Russia, Italy. I was traveled to France as this young 15 going on 16-year-old child prodigy.
Wow.
And so, a lot of the racial riots that was taking place almost every day at the high school, I really didn't get involved, but we had a high school assistant principal by the name of Mr. Humphrey. And Mr. Humphrey, I got sent to the principal's office because the gym teacher, who was actually my football coach, he got mad because, the players, my sophomore team, told him that he is not going to play football in his varsity year. So he got mad, and he was my PE teacher, and he tried to embarrass me and humiliate me in front of, my class, which I don't think teacher should be doing that to a student in front of everybody. It was horrible, and I still feel that way today.
Yeah.
So anyway, he told me that I had to go see the assistant principal because I was going to be punished for lying to him about my boxing career. And he told me I was lying. And so Mr. Humphrey, he sat me in his office and he had a long discussion with me and had a long talk. It just so happened I was going for another Golden Glove title about a week later. And so I invited him to come. And to my surprise, him and another teacher actually showed up. And they came, and I had won like my 5th Golden Glove title.
Wow.
And, was voted, the most outstanding boxer or the MVP of the whole tournament out of 460 boxers. And he came back to the high school, and the high school wanted to do an interview with me, and I turned them down initially because, I was still angry and upset that, I had these white people who just didn't believe that I was telling the truth. But, Mr. Humphrey explained to him, this guy is who he say he is.
Yeah.
And so, being bussed and growing up during that tumultuous time, people ask me today, do I see anything that has changed? Well, of course, a lot has changed, but I still see some things change for the worse, a lot for the better.
Yeah.
But those experiences, growing up, it helped me to view all mankind on an equal playing field. So, when I look at you or when I look at anyone, I can't just say, well, I don't like him because he's white. That'd be the dumbest thing that a person could say.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like when I came up here to Maine in 2000, I'm like, man, this is a white state.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't know what I was in for.
Yeah.
But, people are, is there racism in Maine? Of course, there's racism in every state in our nation. But is it, as, glaring as most people try to make it out to be? I say no. I think the people in Maine are, that term they use, Mainers.
Yeah.
They just Mainers. And I think it's a lot that Maine is sheltered from, contrary to the big cities like me growing up in Chicago, like where you see everything, but I think it's a lot of ignorance to different cultures. If I don't know something about you, then it would behoove me to go and try to find out something about you besides just casting a judgment on you. And so, that leads me right back to my high school, whereas, they judged me and they thought they knew me. And they found out that I was who I said I was all along.
Yeah.
And that's this outstanding boxer, athlete, and a student who wasn't looking, at the color of my counterparts, racial makeup, because my parents didn't grow us up that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, being a boxer, I mean, you're facing people, like you said, one on one. I mean, what does it matter what color this
That's right.
person is? Can they box? What kind of boxer are they?
That's
You
right.
know, I mean, you got to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I thought it was also interesting in your book when you described your experiences when you turned pro.
Yeah.
And you know they're starting to say you're great, you're a professional now, and they're saying, why don't you start selling tickets to your bout, to your own bout? I mean, you got a taste of what that world was like. And
Yes.
can you speak at all about your pro boxing career
Yeah.
and what your impressions of the sport are? Or
Yeah.
you know, I mean, did you have a good experience there? Do you feel like you left it a little bitter? Like, was pro boxing overall a positive thing? Or I mean, because I know you also, as I recall from the book, you were torn. I mean, it was like, should you just stay amateur, pursue your Olympic dream?
Yes.
Right? Can you talk about that decision to go pro and how that worked out for you?
So when I came back from the Olympic trials in Atlanta, Georgia in 1980, I didn't win the gold, but I was 17 years old, you know, going on 18. And, you know, I was disappointed and heartbroken. And I didn't really see a need. I won every major type, became the first person in Illinois boxing history. And I was talking to somebody last week. He told me that record still stands. I won 4 different titles all in 1 year.
Wow.
The AAU, the prestigious Chicago Tribune Golden Gloves, the Catholic Youth Organization, and the Park District title, all in 1 year.
It's a grand slam,
So
or they call
yes, so which was a
of
total,
Illinois boxing.
and
Yeah.
which, you know, I had out of those 4 tournaments, I fought a total of 45 times.
Wow.
And went 45-0 with 42 knockouts.
I'm guessing with not a lot of time in between, by the way, too.
No,
because
you know, you was fight.
professional boxers rest, but
yes,
you're
so sometimes I was having to fight 2 and 3 times in the tournament in a night.
in a night.
Yes, yes,
Oh my!
yes.
That's astounding.
Yes,
That's astounding.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you know, just, you know, the fame that went with me. To go back to something you said, they didn't treat me like a normal high school student because I wasn't normal. You know, like I had to be. Oftentimes when they gave my homework, you know, I would have tutors. You know, somebody who would, and chaperones when I was getting on planes and stuff by myself. Back then, it was way different.
Yeah.
You know, they would contact the airline and make sure that when I first started traveling on a plane, I was 15.
Yeah.
You know, and so I had to have a chaperone.
Incredible.
You know, but you know, just my professional career. So after I racked up all these amateur titles, so I had Muhammad Ali Sports. He had formed this company, and I was one of the first people they wanted to sign to this which was unprecedented for, you know, some kid, you know, coming out of, you know, Harvey, Illinois. And so there was a lot of excitement and a lot of buzz, you know, but I was torn because a part of me wanted to turn pro. But the torn part was my mom she didn't want me to box nowhere.
Wow.
If you read the book, man, the book is hilarious what my mom was saying.
Yeah.
She was totally against it.
Sure.
You know, but so when you know, this is why every child in sports today should get legal representation, because I mean, people just going, you know, my parents was just going by like, I done won all this, they on TV, they seeing all this fame that's going on. And so it really was, we didn't know nothing. We didn't have a lawyer. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have no, shoe endorsement, you know, so with no, you know, signing endorsement, none of that.
Yeah.
So I hooked up with Laurie Meyer Inc. Incorporated. and he was a Chicago-based boxing manager. So I went against Muhammad Ali.
Never a smart move.
No. And so I got with the Chicago-based group.
Yeah.
Because Chicago.
Sure.
Man, listen, that was the worst move I could have made.
Yeah.
Because when it came to the house, they had, this entourage of people that came. So my parents had the house nice, laid out, So they walked in, it was like 3 or 4 of them. And they had some other people waiting in the car and stuff like that. They had camera people.
Wow.
To take pictures and so forth.
Yeah, right.
So the guy, Laurie Meyer, he was sitting there, the manager, and he was going over my contract. And only thing I knew was he was just saying, you'll make money, you're a great fighter, I could take you to the world title, because everybody knew I had this thing. I wanted to be the world champion at the age of 21. And I had sort of mapped it all out.
That was the goal, by 21.
Yes,
Yeah.
I wanted to be the world champion because I really didn't want to fight long, because you can get seriously hurt or killed in boxing.
Sure. Yeah.
You get your, it's a serious sport. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be around that game that long.
Yeah.
And so I went back and forth with my mother. I was still in high school. So when people talk about Kobe Bryant and all them, I was the first student athlete, in Chicago to turn pro. I signed my contract when I was 18. I didn't step into a professional boxing ring until I was 19.
Yeah.
So, so basically, I was just hearing dollar signs, and I wanted to turn pro. And me and my mother was going back and forth with this manager, and not to give the book away, but I agreed, to finish high school, and my mom agreed that I could turn pro. And so I signed the contract, and you know how when you do something and you just know you've been had, you just sit there with a dumb look on your face.
Yeah, you could
Okay.
tell.
Well, we all had one of them looks. Because the man, as soon as I signed that contract, that man scooped up that paperwork, it was hanging out the briefcase.
Yeah.
And he got ghost.
Yep.
Next time I heard from him, it was about 2 weeks later or so. He talking about, my upcoming fight. And so, former heavyweight champion Ernie Terrell, who fought Muhammad Ali, I called him because he just adored my boxing style. He really liked me as a person.
Yeah.
And so I was explaining the contract with him, and he told me, "Champ, you have signed the worst contract out." He said, "In all the years of my boxing,
Wow.
I've been a heavyweight champion of the world, and I've never seen a contract like this." So I signed a contract where the manager got 50%. If I did do shoe endorsements, any royalties, any money that I made, he would get 50% of it.
Incredible.
It's the fine print
Yeah.
in the contract that I didn't know nothing about.
Right. Well, you didn't have a lawyer. And, again, he's barging in just into the family home. And they darn well knew, I'll say for TV, that was a situation. So they were taking advantage of you. I mean, in this day and age, you'd think hopefully people would know well enough. And as you said, it's a good advice.
Well, they
student
still
athletes,
doing it today, though.
they still get away with it.
Yes.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
They still in combat sports especially, they still do it.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's why I wrote what I wrote in the book, because I want to be transparent to all athletes.
Sure. Yeah, you're right.
And so my first professional fight, which was some months later, and I had graduated.
Yeah.
I honored, and I mean, like, I could have not walked across the stage because of, at that time, if you will, the celebrity status that I had. So they really didn't. My high school was like, okay, we can just, mail your diploma to you. But my parents was like, no, I want my baby to walk across the stage like everybody else children.
Yeah.
So I was out of town at that particular time. I was in Colorado at the U.S. Olympic Training Center. And so I came back and, informed my high school I wanted to walk across the stage with everyone else because I had enough credits and I fulfilled getting my high school diploma.
Yeah.
And so after that happened, my fight was scheduled. It was in June when I graduated from high school, and it was in June when I had my professional fight. I had known about the first pro fight back in April. And so we had a good training camp, and they told me who I was fighting. I had no idea that this man already had, 9 or 10 pro fights. And professional fighting and amateur fighting is totally different.
Yeah.
Professional fighting is more strategy, thinking, placing punches, the right way. Amateur fighting, you're throwing a lot of punches and it's fast paced. Professional boxing is not that way.
Right.
But anyway, nevertheless, Ernie Terrell was like, you're not going to make much money with this contract. So I said, what do you mean? He was like, well, if you do a 6-round fight, you get $100 a round. I said, $100 a round? I said, man, are you crazy? He said, no, I'm telling you the unequivocal truth. That's all you're going to get. So when my parents and my neighborhood, the people in my community, they heard about that. So everybody mobilized and got together. And he told me, was I able to sell tickets?
Right.
I told him, hold on, man. What do I look like, a salesman? Man,
Right.
I'm a fighter. He said, listen, you're going to be a salesman today. Because if you don't sell these tickets, he said, with your name, how big your name is, there's no way you're supposed to be, signing a contract like this.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was literally on you and your family and like the neighborhood
So.
But you did it, right? I mean,
so to make a long story short, I became this phenomenal ticket seller.
Yeah.
Because thousands of people would, turn out to my fights.
Wow.
And I was, I started off in my professional career 4-0, getting rid of everybody.
Wow.
So I had a real high knockout percentage. And then
if you knock them out in the first round, you only get $100. By the way, okay, I was gonna say
no.
It wasn't that bad.
So my first professional fight, when the ticket sales and all, I made $35,000, which today would be equivalent to about $260,000.
Right. This is like early 70s.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I made for
incredible.
For at that time I was 19. I had just turned 19. So for a 19-year-old kid, about 200 and 35 or 45,000 or so, on one night's work.
Wow.
That says a lot. But so my first 4 fights went well. I got rid of everybody, whooped everybody. I won. So in my 5th fight, they kept overmatching me with guys. So my second pro fight, I fought a guy with 38 pro fights. All right. And beat him. My next fight, I fought a guy with 47 pro fights. Beat him.
Wow.
They sort of went light on me on my 4th fight when I was in Missouri. Larry Holmes, a former WBC heavyweight champion, Don King, they were sitting in ringside.
Wow.
And this guy, I was in my first main event fight, 10 rounds or more.
Yeah.
And this guy, he had a 24-7-1. So he had over 30-something fights.
Sure.
And, you know, at one point in time, he was a contender in the professional ranks. Whooped him as well.
Wow.
Then in my 5th fight, I happened to fight a guy by the name of Luis K.O. Mateo from San Juan, Puerto Rico. So they was prepping me to actually get in line real early. They was taking me the route that they took Leon Spinks when he fought Ali the first time, when Spinks only had 8 pro fights.
Yeah.
So they was trying to help expedite, you know, my dream of becoming a world champion within 3 years. So in my 5th fight, I took on a guy by the name of Luis Mateo. And that fight had him down. I think the 2nd or the 4th round. I think it was the 2nd round. And he was gone, you know. Stumbled to his feet at the count of 9.
Wow.
The bell rang. The fight went on, and at the end, the decision was a split decision, and they gave the fight to him, which forever left a bitter taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
Because, you know, to this day, and if this guy's listening to this interview, we can do it. I'm 63 years old, and he got to be around 63 or 64.
Yeah.
We
You
can do
listening,
this-
KO?
We can do this again.
All right.
Because that dude, no, he
Sponsor
didn't
it.
whoop me.
Yeah.
All right.
You didn't go down in that fight,
No.
did you? You know, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, he went down for almost the whole count, and he
I
still
beat
gets the
that guy
decision.
out.
You didn't go down.
Not one time.
Yeah. No.
You know, but, you know,
It's frustrating.
so then after that, I think I took one more fight.
Yeah.
And after that, I called it because I just, boxing left a bitter taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
And right after that, then I decided, because I'm an adventurous person, so I decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead and join the Army,
That's right.
you know. And so join the Army with a lot of fanfare. You know, it was sort of like you have this celebrity boxer going into the military. So they didn't treat me quite like how they did a lot of the different soldiers, you know, in some cases. But, you know, I had to go through the basic training and stuff like that. It was hard.
Right.
You know?
Well, I don't want to give away the whole book either,
Yeah.
but I thought it was interesting that, you know, we went from boxing in the U.S. Army, and when you were in basic training, you end up, they're betting on you because, you know, your athleticism and basic training and physical PT tests and such. The sergeants were, well, you know, you were like the star of your platoon, you know, who was, you know, a source of pride for your sergeant because you could do all this PT.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, to bring it out a little bit more though, too, you know, it strikes me about like this gambling thing. I mean, you saw the world of boxing and the money involved and all that.
Yeah.
What is your view now with all these life experiences? Do you know, around like, you know, the whole culture of the gambling and the whole culture of boxing and stuff?
So I think, me personally speaking, you know, like to have sports betting today, because of course, there were people who made millions of dollars off me.
Wow.
Literally millions, you know.
Yeah.
And from the Don Kings to just, you know, some of these, so sports betting was different then.
Yeah.
It was more like in the, you know, back alley, smoked, field boxing arena, you know, in the military. It was, you know, whereas you got the soldiers in these bunk beds lined up. They sleep, but, you know, they're in the back rooms betting.
Right.
You know? So it was a lot different, but, you know, just my overall take on betting. Well, I didn't like betting, and I don't like it today because I look at my stepfather, you know, and my mom had to work. And here again, I talk about this in the book. So it affected my family.
You suffered, gambling
Yes.
was a problem. It took money out of the home and you
Yes.
didn't have it to spare.
Yeah.
You saw the personal cost that problem gambling has
Yes.
growing up.
Yes.
And then so you suffer that and then you get into, you were kind of exploited through the system
Yes.
too,
Yes.
which was built on gambling.
Yes.
And you get in the Army and they're betting on you. And I mean, it's like,
yes.
it's wild.
Yeah. So, my whole thing is like, I was, and I have, because I reflected on some questions you had for me that we talked about. And no, hey, you're absolutely right. I mean, gambling, it did affect my life, because I watched it up close and personal with my stepfather, and my mom, happened to be the breadwinner. My mom was educated for over 35 years. All right. And for my father, who had, he worked equivalent to bath iron work.
Yeah.
So he made great money. But yet and still, man, like, we was eating pork and beans and franks.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Most of the week.
Yeah.
So, and how do you explain a kid, back then, standing in the breakfast line with a green card, getting a free breakfast and free lunch, which I talk about in the book. So yes, it did affect me growing up. And so that's why I'm against how our country have our systems set up. Because all of it, it ain't just a child growing up in poverty because of a gambling system. You have the juvenile system. You have the, judicial system. You have, everything is a system here. And, around the world, because we ain't the only country that has the same thing. Like, we all have been exploited by our systems that's in place. So it don't matter what color you are. That's why, a lot of my black friends, and some of them, with very, very, doctorate degrees, and, got a couple of friends that are, chancellors, at Northwestern, in Illinois. I have a good friend of mine who, is the commissioner of the Illinois Department of Corrections, and remember, I grew up with these guys, and most of them I beat up.
Right. Yeah. Not as impressed.
But the point is, and we talk freely, and they agree with me, that, our systems that are in place in America needs overhauling, especially when you talk about, the criminal system. Because how you going to call it a criminal justice system when there's so much corruption within that system? So that's why, me personally, I don't call it the criminal legal system. I call it the criminal illegal system. And I stand by my words. I'm not taking that back.
Right.
I don't care what anyone say.
Yeah.
Because here was a kid that grew up in poverty. I'm sitting here in a suit and tie, but I'm still in these people's system.
Right.
I can say the wrong thing to you, and you can run out there and tell them people are leading the way. He said this, he threatened me, or he did this, he did that, and I know you won't do that.
Of course,
But I'm just telling you how easy it is when you have, a record.
Yeah. Yeah, and still follows you. I mean, to bring it up to the present and wrap it up, because we're getting close to time. But as you detail in the book, after the Army, you had a scrape with the law, I think in Texas, and you went through a brutal. Speaking of the brutal system, where you're literally faced with having to pick cotton at this jail and prison rather, and you refuse. You did numerous years in solitary confinement, which is incredible. on its own. But then you make your way eventually to Maine, and you were in the Brunswick area, and you turned yourself into a real success. You worked your way up through companies repairing fast food equipment. You went on to start your own successful business, and then some things went off the rails. But in the time we have left, can we talk about this foundation that you're starting now? And it seems like it's informed by everything you've been through, all these systems that you've been through, from army to sports to prisons to corporate America. And now you've got this new foundation. So how do you explain what it's going to do for folks now? What's the goal of this?
Yes.
And can you remind me the name of it again? It was,
yes, the Believe in Hope
Believe in Hope Foundation. Great.
So I came up with that because I have a real soft spot in my heart for Maine.
Yeah.
Maine was the first place that I came to that I became a business owner, as you just discussed. And I made my first $1 million in Maine.
Is that right?
I didn't keep it. I lost it.
Yeah,
all,
right.
Bad investment,
Sure.
family members.
Sure.
But I made it.
Yeah.
And so the people in Maine I found to be so generous. But there are so many hurting Mainers.
Okay. Yeah.
With substance use disorder, the juvenile system needs real people who come from prison, not to flaunt degrees and go into these, places, juvenile places, selling that education is everything. Well, there are kids that don't want to get a college degree.
Yeah.
So the Believe in Hope Foundation, I'm taking all of my life experiences and I'm making connections with all the people I know. For instance, the Harvey Boxing Club, where I got my start.
Oh.
So I'm looking this summer to get with the Portland Boxing Club.
Sure.
All right, and I'm gonna link those two boxing clubs up. And for the Portland Boxing Club and the Harvey Boxing Club, I'm gonna be the bridge. I'm gonna use my celebrity as a boxer to bring, a tournament. Let the Portland Boxing Club, the people from Portland, and I'm gonna work through organizations and people who help fund. I want these kids from Maine, to be able to travel to Chicago and go to Harvey, Illinois, where I grew up, and to experience what it's like going to Chicago. And then I want the Chicago urban kids, to be able to take a trip to Maine. Then when it comes to my military part of the Believe in Hope Foundation, I want to go and serve Maine's homeless veterans, and then go and show that, when I lost everything, I became homeless. And I'll talk about it in the book.
Yeah.
I lost everything. And so that's why I named it God's Love Kept Me Fighting, because if God did it for me, and I know people say this, but if God did it for me, man, he'll do it for anybody. Yeah. So I'm just taking all my life experiences, like you said, Chris, and, I want to share that with Mainers.
That's great.
And help in any way that I can, and to show people, not only in law enforcement, educators, my victim, people are victims of crimes, that there are people who are really serious, about what they did, to harm and hurt not only a victim, but a whole community. And I'm one, because I take what I did, I take full responsibility for the harm that I did. So why not give back to Maine? See, that's what I mean by people who say they mentoring versus life coaching. See, I'm more of a life coach because I want to truly give back to Maine, because the people of Maine has been so generous and kind to me.
And to stay here, like you say, it's a lifelong thing. So I'm guessing that you plan to stay in Maine. This is your new home base.
I'm gonna stay in Maine. And continue to rebuild.
That's great.
And most of the urban communities, disadvantaged communities, I want to show them, through my life story, that anything's possible.
Yep.
You just got to have the fortitude, commitment, dedication, and you got to have help. And
Right.
all of those things, the people of Maine are generously doing to me.
Yep.
You know, think about it.
That's great.
I was in prison oranges and blues. Now I'm sitting in a suit and tie
Yeah,
talking to you.
absolutely. It's
Ain't
an
that
amazing book. It really is. You know,
Beautiful
the
thing.
book is super inspiring, and it really shows your journey here.
Yes.
And I really get the distinct impression that we've, in terms of us Mainers, we've just really begun to see you.
Yes.
Like you now is your time to shine.
Yes.
And with all this work, I think we're going to be seeing you in the public eye and in our communities a lot more. Taking this leadership role, this coaching role toward people, and that's fantastic. You know? I mean, it's real benefit for the state to have someone with your experience and background doing the kind of work that you've already begun doing with this foundation.
Yes, and I was in a person that was in the background. I let the Leos and the Brandon Browns and the Joe Jacksons and all of those guys.
Yeah.
And I'll name them.
Sure.
Nothing against their work because they all do great work.
Right.
But I'm a person who actually lived it.
Mm-hmm.
I lived it.
Right.
And now I'm out.
Yeah, exactly.
You see?
Yep.
And I'm excited about working with the people of Maine and sharing my experiences and helping organizations and just helping, just come to a greater understanding that, there are people who can change their life.
Yeah.
Through help, dedication, hard work. You got to be dedicated and committed to giving back because during the day that go by, I don't think about the crime that I committed against Maine.
Right.
And of all the places, man, here again, man, that's why, I'm standing here and I want to give back to Maine.
Yeah.
Because the people here has just been so generous, And
we
I'm
really
thankful.
appreciate that. And, so how could viewers get in touch or get your book? What's a good way to connect with you and the foundation?
So you could, for those who haven't purchased the book, get the book.
God's Love Kept Me Fighting.
God's Love Kept Me Fighting. You
order
can,
it through an independent bookstore if you can, but I'll put my pitch in. But.
Yes. You could Google my name, and it will take you to Amazon. And Ingram Spark, and I'm on my book. I just found out a few days ago it finally reached all around the world. So
perfect.
It's on every platform that you could think of. So it's no way that you won't be able to purchase the book. So go get the book. It's a great read.
Yeah.
You also can reach me at victoryfighter219 at gmail.com.
Right. Victory Fighter, all one word, 219, the numbers, at gmail.com. That's great.
Got it.
And as I mentioned, we'll be certainly hearing from you and seeing more of you in the very near future. E, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome, sir.
Wonderful to talk with you in person today.
All right.
And thanks again to Luigi Scarcelli, our producer here. This has been the inaugural episode of the Bollard Bulletin on the Portland Media Center channel. And thank you again for joining us. We're looking forward to more of this kind of programming to come in the future. So thank you.